Hello there guys, on this video I'm going to be comparing Session and Skater XL, and I want to point out three things about the control system that makes Skater XL a much easier game to play. Like, it's astonishing how much easier it is to play because of these three very subtle things. Now, I think two of these you'll know about already, they really do stand out, but one of them is a difference in the way the dual stick control works with your left and right foot, it really changes the way that you skate when you're in switch. And it means that if you are doing a line and you do any trick that involves a 180 turn, on Skater XL it is much easier to continue your line than it is on this. It's a massive difference to the way that the games work. I didn't even realise that it was different, and I was trying to use the same controls on both games. The controls are not the same, they're really not. And I want to point out something about the way these two games differ that I think a lot of people won't have realised. But the first 2 points that I want to talk about, the first one that makes Skater XL easier is the gravity of the physics is slightly different on these two games, and Skater XL is a little bit floaty compared to Session, which gives you a little bit more time on your tricks. Absolutely, it's easier to do tricks on Skater XL because your skater does float a little bit. I mean, initially I didn't like that because it doesn't feel realistic, but you you get used to it really quickly. But unfortunately, when you come back into Session from Skater XL, all of a sudden it's very hard to do any tricks because you're not floating. So I kind of wish that the gravity of these two games was exactly the same. Either they were both like Session or they were both like Skater XL. That would help a lot. But at the moment they are a little bit different, so Skater XL is definitely easier to execute your trick than this. So that's the first difference, but you've probably noticed that yourself. The second one, which is this is also something that you've probably noticed as well, is the mechanics of just doing an ollie, okay? On Session, if you want to do an ollie, you've got to do exactly the same as you do in real life. You pull your back foot stick down that prepares the ollie, and then you push your front foot stick up to actually do the ollie, like so, right? I think the animation of the ollie on this game is horrible. Why does he dip down so much? I really hope they fixed that. I mean, kick flips and heel flips and shove its, they're all nice and flat, but yeah, there we go. Oh no, that was a bit tilted. But the ollies are very nose pointy, aren't they? So yeah, I hope they fixed that. But anyway, to do an ollie on this game, you've got to use both sticks. There is no other way about that. You have to. Same in real life, you've got to use both foot. You can't do an ollie just on your back foot. On Skater XL, you can. You can pull down on your right stick, being your back foot if you're in regular stance, like this, and then just let it go, and you'll do an ollie. Now on this game, if you do that, you prepare the ollie, and then you think, no, change my mind, and you just stand back up. Now the other thing on Skater XL as well, which is really quite handy, and it makes life much easier, is if you pull down on your back foot, you prepare an ollie, but then if you pull down on your front foot as well, you actually prepare for a high ollie, and you can ollie quite easily over a picnic table doing that, right? It makes a huge difference. It's very easy to get up onto a ledge or make sure you can clean ollie over something using this. If I pull down on my front foot now on Session, I'll do a very small ollie, like this, okay? A really awful ollie. But on Skater XL, that doesn't happen. You pull down on both sticks and then just let them go, and you're going to do an ollie about waist height, or maybe a little bit higher. So that makes life very easy. Now if you're doing a kick flip, if you're doing any kind of flip, you have to do an input on both sticks. So both games are exactly the same if you're doing, for instance, a kick flip. So you've got to pull down to prepare, to compress, and then I'm going to have to push to the, I'm in regular stance, so I'm going to be pushing my front foot, my left stick to the left, like this, and I'll do a kick flip, and exactly the same for a heel flip. Both games are exactly the same on flips. Where both games differ, which I don't think many people will realise, is when you are in switch stance. The controls are completely different if you're in switch stance on Session compared to Skater XL. And because of the way they are different, it means that it's much more difficult on Session to do a line than it is on Skater XL. And the reason for that is because when we're in switch, like this, So we're in switch stance now on session, and now my controls are completely different. In switch stance on session, if I pull down on the right stick, which is what I would normally do in regular stance to prepare an ollie, nothing is going to happen. I'm pulling down on the right stick now, nothing is happening. If I do that movement on my controller in Skater XL, then what would happen is this. I would prepare for a fakie ollie, switch ollie, fakie ollie. Yeah, fakie ollie. Right, so pulling down on my right stick, which is my right foot, on this game moves my foot towards the centre of the board. That's what I'm telling the skater to do. Nothing happens. Pushing up on my right stick on this game moves my right foot towards the nose, like that. So I'm preparing, okay? On Skater XL, it's the other way. On Skater XL, if I pull down on my right stick, my right foot, it will go to the nose, it will do this. Now, that makes a huge difference in the game, because it means that whether you're in switch stance or regular, you can prepare a trick by pulling down on your right stick. So you only ever have to pull down on your right stick to do anything on that game. You know you're going to do something. You know that when you pull down on your right stick, you are going to prepare, you're going to pop, right? It's different on this. The way this game works is both sticks, if you push them up, that moves either your left or your right foot towards the nose. If you pull them down, it moves your left or your right foot towards the tail. So if I want to prepare my back foot, my current left foot, I have to pull it down like this, and I go towards the tail. If I want to, if I push my left foot upwards, nothing will happen because it's moving it towards the centre of the board, and that input does nothing. So if I, doing this, enables us to do a switch ollie, but to do that movement, I have got to pull down on the left stick to prepare my left foot. And I've got to push up on the right stick towards the nose to actually execute the trick, like so. It's exactly the opposite on Skater XL. Now, the same thing happens with pushing the sticks left or right. I'm in switch stance now, so if I pull down on my left stick, I'm preparing my left foot, so I'm kind of like compressing. But if I want to do a heel flip, my front foot wants to kick out front side, so I'll catch my heel on the board. And to do that movement, I have to move my right stick to the left. Now, as we're looking at the television, that is to the left of our television. So I'll move it to the left and he'll do that. So we've got the switch heel flip. If I want to do a switch kick flip, I'm pulling down on my left stick to move my left foot towards the tail end of the board. And when I let it go, I've got to push right on my front stick to move my front foot towards the backside. So that's going to do a kick flip like this. Now, looking at your television, that sort of makes sense, really, doesn't it? But it does mean that everything is kind of backwards to what I would normally do. So if I go back to regular stance, now I'm pulling down on my right stick to prepare my ollie, and if I want to do a kick flip, I'm pushing towards the left-hand side of the television, and I'll do a kick flip like this. And if I want to do a heel flip, I'm going to push towards the right-hand side of the television. So moving to the left is my kick flip move, moving to the right is my heel flip move. When I turn around the other way, moving to the left is now my heel flip move, and moving to the right is now my kick flip move. So they've switched over because I've turned around. That all makes sense. On Skater XL, the controls don't work that way. Now, it's kind of like, I think both of these games have thought about the fundamentals of what's going on in a different way. What they've thought about is up is towards the nose, down is towards the tail. That's what Session does. Whereas Skater XL doesn't do that. It does it differently. So we've just seen the way this kind of works in this game. I'm going to now jump over to Skater XL. It's going to be a little bit easier in here because we can have the controller view on the screen. So we can have a look at what's actually going on with the inputs. But it's exactly the opposite It is exactly the opposite, and that makes the game way easier, because you can just skate along and just keep pulling down on the right stick no matter where you are and what you're doing, and whether you are skating regular or switch, you're going to pop a trick. It's going to do something. Whereas on session, keeping pulling down on the right stick, you know, if you're in regular stance, it will do something. But if you're not in but if you're in switch, it won't do anything at all. So this means that every time you do a 180 movement, or any multiplication of a 180 movement, all of a sudden you've got to completely change what you input on your controller, otherwise nothing happens. Now when you're doing a fast line and approaching obstacles, it's very hard to do that on a controller on session compared to on Skater XL, because on Skater XL, when you do that, you are you just flick the stick down, and it's just simple. So now that we're in here, I'm in this is a regular stance skater, so I'm in regular stance. So I pull back on my right foot, my right stick, and I prepare my ollie. Now I don't have to use my left stick, I can just let it go. And as I said before, if I pull back on both sticks and then just let go, I do a really high ollie. So that was the first difference we spoke about, and that makes this game so much easier than session. It really does. It's so easy to approach obstacles and just do this. And you don't have to compress for long either. You can just flick both sticks down and you do a massive ollie. Now when you're doing, you know, quite a tight line, it's so easy to do this and do a big ollie ready for the next thing than on session. On session, you've got to prepare your back foot, and you've got to compress, and then you've got to flick your front foot up to be able to do your ollie. And it's like you need time to do those movements, and you can't just flick down and flick up. If you do that, you know, you're doing your ollie would be useless if you just went down really quickly. But on this game, both sticks flick down and just let them go, massive ollie, right? So for a start, that makes the game way easier. But when we get into switch, we're going to have to do an ollie for this. So there we go. So now we're in switch stance. Let's move away from here a little bit. So we're in switch. Now, if I pull down on the right stick, that's my right foot, which is now my front foot. Pulling down on that in session did nothing, because what I'm telling the game to do is to move my front foot towards the middle of the board. That does nothing. But on this game, down is now towards the nose, like so. So that means pulling down on the right stick in switch stance does this. Pull down, just let go. Pulling down on both sticks does a fakey ollie, but a high one. Right? That makes the game really easy, because whether I'm in regular stance or whether I'm switch, pulling down on both sticks and just letting them go really quickly will do a high ollie or a high fakey ollie. You see? And then just pulling down on the right stick does a normal size ollie or fakey ollie. So that is a muscle memory movement on your thumbs, which is the same whichever stance you're in when you're approaching an obstacle on a line. You don't have to adjust. You don't have to think, oh, I'm in switch, I've got to change the way I use my thing. Now, I mean, obviously you're not doing the same trick, but you are doing something that gets you up onto the obstacle. So you just do this. And then if you're in regular stance, I'm doing exactly the same thing on the controller. Pulling down on both sticks, letting them go. Pulling down on both sticks, letting them go. On session, that wouldn't do anything if I was on switch. Nothing would have happened. Now, the difference as well with kick flips and heel flips, it's like let me just get that around to regular stance. So on both games, pull down on your back foot, move towards the left in regular stance, you're going to do a kick flip. On both games, towards the right on regular stance, you're going to do a heel flip. So if I change over to switch, now I'm going to pull down on my front foot, which is now my right stick. So it's like normally preparing an ollie if I was in regular stance. And I'm going to push to the left, like so. Now that does a kick flip. Well, a fakey kick flip. If I do the other way, it's going to do a fakey heel flip. So exactly the same movement on the controller either does a normal kick flip or a fakey kick flip for regular or switch stance. It's not the same in session. So I'll turn back around the other way. There we go. So, no, I want to be this way. Right. So if I now pull on my my left stick, I'm pulling down on my left stick, but that doesn't do anything with my left foot, because I'm telling my left foot to go towards the middle of the board. If I push up on my left stick, I'm telling my left foot move towards the tail. Well, it's the nose really, isn't it? Because my board's the other way round. But I'm going to say tail for what is the back of how I'm standing. But it is really the nose. So yeah, if I just push up and let go on my my left stick, this happens. I'm doing a switch ollie. If you do that on session, nothing will happen, because I need to pull down on my left stick on session, which moves my left foot towards sort of like behind me, kind of like the tail direction, which is now the nose because the board's the other way around. So you see it's completely the opposite. And exactly the same thing with kick flips and heel flips. On this game, it depends on which way you're standing. On the other game, it depends on which way you're traveling. So that's the difference. It's to do with whether you're switch or regular, and your direction of travel completely changes the controls on these two games. And because of that, this game is so much easier to play, because you can just keep doing the same input over and over, and whether you are regular or switch, something will happen. Not the same trick, but something will happen. So we can, let's, what's my thing? Oh, it's this, isn't it? Let's get the marker. So for instance, if I go up here, and I'm going to ollie down here onto this thing here, but I'll do a 180. So that means I'm going to be in switch stance when I approach this rail. So on session, it would have been difficult for me to do a trick to get onto the rail, but all I'm going to do is pull down on the right stick every time. So that's going to be, I'll show you. So from here, we're going to do, I'll do a high pop, but I'm going to make sure that I land this way. And then when I do this, it's really easy because I'm doing the same movement. And here as well, same movement. I'm just pulling down on the right stick every time, no matter what. Now if I turn back to regular stance, again, same movement does a trick. So I can do like a big spin over these. So I did a backside 360. But you see what I mean? It makes this game really easy, because all you've got to do is pull down and let go on your right stick, and whatever stance you're in, you're going to do a trick. You don't have to think, oh, I'm in switch stance, I've got to do something different. You really don't have to think that. And I mean, no matter what you're approaching and what stance you are in, pulling down on both sticks does a high pop. So it's either going to be, obviously, this, so you're doing a high ollie, or if you're facing the other way, you're going to be doing this, so you're going to be doing a high fakie ollie. Well, don't do the flip. So there, you've got a high fakie ollie, or if you're standing, regular stance, you've got a high ollie. So just pulling down and letting go on both sticks on this game is going to be enough for any obstacle you're approaching. So whatever you're coming up against, flick both sticks down really quickly, and you're going to be fine. On session, you cannot do that. You just can't. You've got to adjust what you're doing, and you have to really think about it. So yeah, this game, for those three reasons, is so much better, so much easier than there's no way I would have made that. I wouldn't have made that line. Whoops, oh my board's gone underground. But yeah, that line I just did there, on session, I wouldn't have been able to do that line. It would have been, the movements that you have to do, it would have been too difficult to get onto that little platform by the sign. Oh, I missed it. I love this line. You see what I mean? It just makes lines really, 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 really easy on this game. So that is a huge difference between these two games. That I honestly think that if you've played on one and you jump to the other, you might not notice that it's like that. Because you just think, oh yeah, left foot, right foot, this is the way that works. And whichever one you start on, that's the one that you get used to, the way that works. And then it makes it very, very difficult when you go onto the other one to try and do anything in switch stance. But the transition from session to this is really easy. The transition from this to session is very hard. So if you started off on this and then you go and play session, I can sort of understand now why a lot of people that are fans of this game have sort of like said, oh my god, the what you call it is terrible. See, I'm trying to do a fakey ollie and I can't. But that's the movement I'd need to do on session. This movement here would do a fakey ollie on session. Now I'm pushing my right foot towards the nose, upwards on my controller, which on this game is actually pulling it towards the centre of the board. So I'm preparing nothing now, I'm just bending down. But yeah, on session that would have done something. But on this game, all I've got to do is the same each way. It's almost like the controls on session. If you change the controls on session to front foot, back foot, instead of left foot, right foot, it's almost like that. Now it's not the same because you're not going to be doing the same trick, but it means that the input that you put into the controller is going to do a trick. So yeah, it's nearly the same as that. That makes a huge difference to the way the game plays. It really does. Oops, I did it again. I'm pushing up on my right stick to try and do a nollie, and that's not correct for this game. It's like it's just the adjustment. You've got to adjust whichever way you come in from one game to the other. You've got to adjust, but the adjustment on this game is so much easier because you probably ain't got to think about it. It's just like just do the same thing all the time, and you're gonna do a trick. So I'll do the same movement again. Not exactly the same movement, because I don't want to do that trick. But yeah, as long as you're pulling down on the right stick, you are doing a trick. And that's not the same in the other game. So for this reason, Skater XL is much, much easier to play than Session. We've got three reasons there. First of all, we've got the physics. The gravity is different on the two games. The gravity on this game is a little bit floaty, and the gravity on Session is not. And because of that, you get a little bit more time. And it does make a huge difference. It means you can do things you wouldn't normally be able to do. So yeah, it does make a very big difference. I love this line. It's a big difference, it really is. But I think because of that, this game is a lot more accessible. It's like if you've not played either of them, this is by far the easier of the two. And you'll be able to learn this one and these controls much more quickly and much more easily than you will do in Session. It's a massive difference. Especially the ability to just do this to ollie or to do this to high ollie. It's like to ollie over a picnic table on this is absolutely a piece of piss. It really is. And you're not going to do that on Session. You're just not going to do it. It's like your skaters just your pop just ain't going to be enough. And it's difficult as well. You've got to use both sticks. But on this, just hold them down, let them go, and you're right over the top. It's insane. So this is a little bit more arcadey because of these things. It's like, I mean, someone left a comment on my video where I was in my first look at this game, and they said, "You're skating like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, why don't you do real tricks?" And I read the comment and I was thinking, the problem is that I can skateboard like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I can't do that on Session. I can't do like a crazy number of flips or whatever and you know, like outlandish tricks that just wouldn't be possible for even like you know, a really good pro skater. I can't do that on Session because it very well simulates what you've properly got to do with your feet, and it very well simulates the physics of real gravity as well. So on that game, all you can do is stuff that you would be able to do in real life if you was a really good skater. On this game, you can do things that are insane. You can do things that are like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, outlandish tricks that aren't possible for you to do in real life. Now, I almost replied to the comment saying the problem is that the game enables me to do these things because the physics aren't correct. And I mean, he was someone who was kind of like a fan of this game, trying to say, oh, you're not playing it properly. And I'm thinking, well, actually, the game lets me do these things. It's the game that's not right. It's not the way I'm playing it that's wrong. It's the fact that the game enables me to do things that are, you know, not really possible to do. This game is more arcadey than Session because it enables me to do crazy things that you can't do in real life. I mean, you don't really see it so much in the street section, but if you go into the big ramp thing, it's insane the tricks that you can do, simply because it's a little bit floaty. And also we have this ability to just go massive ollie with both of these sticks, just flick them down and let them go, and you do a great big ollie. And that makes pretty much anything really, really easy on this game. You know, doing stuff like that is just so easy because the game enables you to do those things. I do like it when he catches the board, but it isn't quite level on the floor like that. You're just on the edge and then it goes down. I like that. Oh, stop pushing like this. I got the achievement yesterday for pushing Mongo. I was like, ah, bollocks. This game is a lot more forgiving as well. If you bump into something, there's a much greater chance that you'll just bounce off it than on Session. On Session, if you make a mistake, you're going to pay for that mistake and you're falling off. On this game, it is a lot more forgiving. It's much easier to do a long line on this game with a lot of tricks than it is on Session. Much easier. It's a huge difference. On Session, if you manage to put a line together of 4 or 5 tricks, that's really an accomplishment. On this game, you can just go and skate for as long as you like. I think both games kind of look good when you're doing tricks. It looks nice and everything. I think there's a much greater sense of achievement when you do those tricks on Session compared to on this, because it's a lot harder on Session to do the tricks. To maintain a line for a significant amount of time is much more difficult on Session than it is on here. Mainly down to that ollie where you don't have to bother with your front foot at all. That's what makes a big difference. Oh, nice and slow. I love the slow flips. I didn't think that you could do slow flips on this game at all when I first played it, but you absolutely can. I do love that. That looks so nice, doesn't it? Yeah, it's so easy to keep a line on this game. It's also very forgiving if you go onto the grass or something like that, or if you roll over some pebbles or something. On Session, you'd be off straight away. You go into something like that, you're going to fall off. On this game, it just really acts like normal pavement. So yeah, there is a big difference with those two things. And the floatiness means that you can do like double flips really easy and stuff as well. So easy to do those. Even without the high pop ollie, it's really easy. But yeah, you can do really quite crazy tricks on this game that you most certainly wouldn't be able to do in real life, and you most certainly can't do on Session either. I think Session is absolutely a much more accurate representation of real life skateboarding, but this game is a lot more accessible. It's a lot easier to pick up and play. It's a lot more forgiving. And it just gives you a bit more time as well. Now, I know there's a lot of fans of this game that were really angry about my last video saying I think Session is better. I've got to be honest, this game is not such an accurate representation of skateboarding as what Session is. And this game is easier because of that. The physics are slightly off, that makes it easier. You can pop ollies just by pulling your back foot down. You can't do that in real life. That makes it easier. And you can do a high ollie just by pulling both sticks down. You can't do that in real life either. And that makes the game easier. But as far as the thing that I've just said about the sticks, it being backwards on one game compared to the other, I think this game's got it right. I think the way this works is actually correct, because what's happening at the moment, I'm pulling down on my my right foot, to be able to pop an ollie. And when I turn around like that, I'm pulling down on my right foot, which is, it's doing the same action, it's just my skateboarder is standing the other way. I think this way is correct. It's kind of like, this is exactly the same movement. And I'm doing the same thing with my thumb as this. It's the same thing. It's like this idea of the up and down on the sticks being, forwards and backwards on your body depending on left leg, right leg. I think the way Skater XL has done that is more realistic than the way that Session have done it. What Session have done is said your direction of travel and whether your body is front side or back side dictates what the sticks do. And this game is exactly the opposite. And I think the way this game is actually correct, as opposed to the way Session is. And I think they've got that wrong. That said, I still think Session is a more accurate representation of translating a controller onto skateboarding. Simply because there's a couple of things. The gravity is off on this game, it's too floaty, but that makes it easy. You get used to it and you don't mind it. When you first get in here, you're like, this is weird. The physics are just way off. I'm floating all over the place. It's insane. It's so noticeable on the big ramp. But you get used to it really, really quickly, and it just means you have a little bit more time to do your trick. Now, on Session, that's not the case. The gravity on Session is pretty much nailed, Earth gravity, and it makes it difficult to do a trick. In real life, when you do a skateboard trick, I mean, you do float a little bit, but it's not significant. Oh, that was terrible. Get back up. But yeah, there's you'll see what I mean when we go over this. When we get down here, you'll see what I mean. The gravity on this game is just way off. It's way off. It's too floaty by quite a long way. But that just makes it easy. I mean, it's not terrible, but we do float quite a lot. I mean, that is not real. Those physics are certainly not real. Whoops. But on Session, that's not the case. You don't float like that on Session. But it does mean that you can do stuff on here that is not humanly possible. I mean, I actually got an achievement and it said not scientifically possible, and I was thinking, yep, you're dead right. That was not scientifically possible. It made me laugh. But yeah, it is a little bit. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That is not a possible thing to do. It just isn't possible for anyone to do that in real life because we've got gravity. But on Session, that is not you can't do that. So Session is a better representation of real world skating. And the fact that you've got to use both feet to do an ollie is also a better representation of real world skating. You've absolutely got to use your front foot when you do an ollie. And skating's difficult. You can't just pop a massive ollie as easily as doing this. And on Session, it is really quite difficult to pop a big ollie. You really have to prepare. You've got to have enough time to prepare. You've got to move the sticks at the right speed to get the compression and to get the actual lift. On this game, you ain't got to do any of that. You just push the sticks down and let them go. And every single ollie is going to be massive. They're all going to be the same. They're all going to be massive. Now on Session, depending on how quickly you push the sticks down, how far you push the sticks, how quickly you push the front stick up, and also how far you push it, all of those things will change your ollie. It'll either be a really shitty little one, where your board's going to be a bad angle, or it's going to be a brilliant ollie. I mean, they don't level out properly, they haven't got the animation of that quite correct, but the quality of your ollie depends on the quality of your inputs. That makes the game a much better representation of skateboarding. On this game, it doesn't matter how I flip these two sticks down, I'm doing this massive ollie. I can flick them down quick, I can hold them down and then let them go. I'm doing a massive ollie either way. On Session, that's not going to happen. I'd do a poxy little ollie where I'd barely leave the floor and I'd fall off. I wouldn't hit my obstacle. That makes Session a much, much more difficult game, but it also makes Session a much, much more accurate representation of skateboarding. Now, if you are a fan of this game that's been saying in the comments the physics of this are more accurate to skateboarding, they're just not. They're really not. That is not correct. It's not a matter of opinion, it's just not correct. You've got to do the correct input, and it's got to be a good input on session to get a good trick. If you do a bad input, you pull the stick down too slowly, you don't pull it down enough, you swing your arc not enough or whatever, then your trick's going to be rubbish. And on this game, it's not. On this game, you're approaching an obstacle, you flip both sticks down really quickly, and you're way up on top of that obstacle. You really are. There is a slight difference. If you hold them down a little bit more, or if you pull them down really quickly, you'll do a very slight difference. But that slight difference is very small. So you've got like the margin of error is almost non-existent on this game. You're pretty much going to make every obstacle. If you're trying to get over a really big fence or something, then you've really got to push it. But on session, your margin of error is enormous. If you don't do it right, you are going to fall off. So as I said before, when you're trying to do a line on session, it's actually very difficult to put a line together of more than about 3 tricks. Because every single trick that you do is a challenge. When you do put a line together of 3 tricks or so, it feels really rewarding, but you've got to work at it. Now on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, you can put a line together of 100 tricks, and there is no sense of accomplishment. It doesn't make you feel like you've achieved anything. Now, on one end of the scale, we've got the arcadiness of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. On the other end of the scale, we've got the realism of Session. Session being really hard to put a line down and you're probably going to fall off. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater being really, really easy and you can just keep on going until you're bored or your controller runs out of batteries. This game sits in the middle, but obviously much more towards the Session end than Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But I could skate on this game for an hour doing trick after trick after trick without falling off, without breaking my line. And I think anyone else having a little bit of experience on this game could do the same thing as well. I don't think hardly anybody could accomplish that same feat on Session. It's just a lot more challenging, which equally makes it a bit more rewarding, but equally makes it not quite accessible. And the other really important thing about that means that when you transition between these 2 games to go from this one to that one is actually really quite difficult. It's a very difficult transition. So yeah, for all those people that have been saying, no, this is better, you're going to get into that game, you'll try and use the controls of this game on that game, and it's going to be really fucking hard for you. We haven't got the moon physics, so you've got to deal with that for a start. You haven't got the one stick ollie, so you've got to use your front foot, which does make things a lot more difficult. And also, as soon as you go into switch stance, everything on your controller changes, so you've got to learn new controls. Now, that whole idea of the controller being backwards on switch on these 2 games, I think this game does it right, but in real life, when you're skating switch, it is very different in your head what you're doing. It's kind of like a bit weird how everything gets a little bit backwards, but not backwards. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit weird. And in Session, it kind of messes with your head in a similar way. It's like I'm now in switch stance, all of a sudden everything's kind of different and backwards. Whereas on this game, you can say I'm now in switch stance, I can do exactly the same inputs on the controller and tricks will happen. They're not the same tricks, but tricks are gonna happen. So that means you don't have to relearn a whole bunch of movements on your controller to be able to maintain your line. You haven't got to do that. If you want to do a specific trick, you might have to do it a little bit differently to what you did before, but it means that it's just easy to keep on skating. So anyway, that's all for this video, but there is a massive fundamental difference between the way these 2 games work on that left foot, right foot control system, which makes a very big difference to the way that you skate. But I think if you move Session over to front foot, back foot, then it means that you can do the same inputs on the controller that you're doing on this game and tricks will happen. They're not the same tricks, but tricks will happen, so that makes it easier to maintain your line. But obviously you also need to always use your front foot when you're doing an ollie, whereas on this game you don't have to do that. And that one little thing makes this game a lot easier, especially if you're doing a line where you're going to be doing a couple of tricks that are quite close together. It makes it so much easier. So we've got 3 differences between these 2 games, and every single one of them means that this game is easier. Every single one of them means that this game is more accessible. two of them mean that this game is not a very good representation of real-world skateboarding, whereas Session is. One of them means that this game is a good representation of real-world skateboarding, whereas Session is not. And obviously that's the moon physics on this game are not correct, whereas on Session the gravity is correct. And also the ability to just flick the sticks down and do a massive ollie, that's not correct either. You've got to work for your ollies on Session, but I do think that the switch stance, the idea of up and down and left and right on the sticks when you're standing in switch, I think this game's got that nailed, and I think Session hasn't. And it's a real shame that it isn't the same way on Session, because it makes it much easier. It really does make it much easier to maintain your line. Now, Session has a lot of customizability in the menus. You can adjust pretty much fucking everything, you really can, but that is not a thing that you can adjust. I mean, your left foot, right foot, front foot, back foot, that will make it possible to do tricks, but the tricks ain't going to be the same. It's not going to replicate the way this game works. It just means that you can do the same thing with your hands and tricks will happen. And on this game you can do the same things with your hands and tricks will happen, but they're going to be different tricks. So there we go. If you have been struggling to move from this to Session, then I think that those are going to be the reasons why. And if you take into consideration those three things and then try out Session, it's going to be difficult, but you are going to be able to kind of skate switch and realise what's going on, as opposed to getting in there and thinking nothing fucking works, this game's broken, what's happening, I'm trying to prepare a trick and my skater's not even moving, which is exactly what would happen at the moment. If you are moving from Session to this, then knowing those things will make you realise how easy it is to skate on this game. If you're having difficulty on Session, or you think it's a bit too hard, get on this and it will be so much easier for you. You're going to have a lot more fun because you're just going to be able to do lines of tricks for as long as you like. It is much, much easier. So yeah, there is a huge difference between these two games that I hadn't noticed. You just kind of think, oh, the sticks represent your feet. Both of these games work the same. And it's not like that, especially when you switch over to switch stance. It's completely different with the way they're thinking. They're thinking, what direction is my board facing, what direction am I travelling, which is my front, which is my back foot. And the developers of these two games made different decisions based on those things to the way that the inputs work. There we go. So, if you hated this video because I said Session is a more accurate representation of the way skating feels in real life, then give me another thumbs down, leave another bitchy twat-ass comment, but it really isn't. Session is a better representation of the way skating is in real life. This game is a lot more forgiving. It's a lot easier than skateboarding is in real life, and those are the reasons. But I've got to give it to you, that controller thing for switch stance, I think this game nails that better. But in real life, gravity is not like it is on this game, and in real life you absolutely need to use both legs to do an ollie, and those two differences make a big difference. They really do, and that puts Session much further ahead than this game when it comes to representing the way real life skateboarding works. But I do wish there was an option in Session to kind of get that stick thing when you're in switch to work the same way this does. I think this is the correct way, and I think Session is the wrong way. It's like, just think about it. Think about what happens when you change over from regular to switch. What happens with your legs? What do you do? What do you do with your now front leg through a fakie ollie, which used to be your back leg? You do the same stuff. You use the same muscles. I want to use the same muscles in my thumb. So yeah, I think I think they've got it wrong, and I think this game's got it right. But there we go. Feel free to leave comments and leave thumbs up or down. Feel free to have massive arguments in the comments if you're one of the people that like Session against one of the people that like Skater XL. I like them both. I am very aware that there are some things on one game that are better than on the other game. But when I mention those things, it seems that everybody has a complete and utter fanny attack and you can't hold yourselves together. That's right. You don't have to get so offended that I'm pointing out a couple of things on the game that you're in love with that aren't quite right, okay? Just like both games, play them both, enjoy them both. It's amazing that we've got 2 skateboard games that we can play right now and another one just coming in a couple of weeks. You know, just embrace that and enjoy it. Don't say, this one's amazing, that one's shit, therefore I'm never playing that one. Learn them both, enjoy them both. I'll tell you what, if you're a fan of Skater XL and you take the time to learn how to skate in session and you do a line in session, it's going to be a lot more rewarding because it's a lot more difficult and you've got to work at it. Once you can do a good line in session, you're going to feel really good about it. But in this game, it's really, really easy to do a good line. So you don't get that same feeling. But in this game, you can watch yourself doing the line and it looks good, but you don't get that amazing feeling of accomplishment that you've done something that was really hard and challenging. And in session you do get that, but you've got to work for it. You've really got to work for it. So try them both. If you're a fan of session, come in here and try this. Give it like an hour or so to get used to the different physics. Once you've got used to them, you won't mind it anymore. And you'll just be able to do massive lines. But when you go back over the session, prepare to struggle a little bit. If you're a fan of this and you're one of the people that hasn't really been playing session much or whatever, have a crack on session and you're going to have to put a bit of effort in because it's more difficult. But once you've put that bit of effort in, you're going to find that when you do a line, you're going to feel really good because it's a lot of work, it's hard work. And you'll get that same sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that you get in real life, because real life skateboarding is hard and session replicates that a lot better than this does. So yeah, get yourselves on session, practice. It's going to be hard work. Remember that you've got to use your front foot all the time, even if it's just an ollie, and don't expect to be able to roll up to a massive fence and just flip both your sticks down and pop over the top of it. That is not going to happen. But can you use that in real life? I can't. But you are going to be in an environment which is much more like simulating the true experience of real life skateboarding. You ain't going to be able to do a crazy amount of flips while you're floating in the air. You certainly won't be able to do anything in session that we can do on this ramp. That is not going to happen. But would it happen in real life? Of course it wouldn't. It wouldn't happen in real life, so it ain't going to happen on that game, because that game's a good representation of the way skating works in real life. But if you're expecting to do anything like this, just forget about it, right? I'm telling you, that is never going to happen with any skateboarder in real life, and it's also never going to happen on session. If you fall off, don't expect to bounce into space either, because session's nailed Earth gravity and this game hasn't. It just hasn't. And there's no way that anyone can argue with that. Someone did leave a comment saying, actually, the gravity physics in session are correct because they've used this mathematical equation that makes the physics right. No, they haven't. They really haven't. These physics are not right. What I just did then doesn't happen on Earth, no matter who you are. If you're the Birdman with wings, that still ain't going to happen. Maybe that old geezer from Up with all the helium balloons tied to him, he might be able to do it, but nobody else. That is just not correct, and you can't do that in session. Absolutely no way could we replicate what just happened there in session. I mean, first of all, we ain't got a massive ramp, but if we did, if we went off that massive ramp, we would be doing the same as a real life skateboarder. Certainly not what we've just witnessed there. This game is off. It is off as far as the gravity is concerned, but it makes it much, much easier and more accessible for new people. And you do get used to it, and once you get used to it, you don't mind it. But when you're first coming here from session, you think, what the fuck's this? What's going on? Why am I floating all over the place? It's horrible when you first come in here, but once you get used to it, it's all right. I quite like it now. When I'm not doing what I just did, when I'm doing a normal line in a normal street park or something, it's quite useful. You can do a lot of really quite nice tricks, and you can scale it down. You can just do normal basic tricks, so it's like real skateboarding. But as that comment said, he laughed at me and says, you're doing tricks like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, why don't you skate like real tricks? Because the game lets me do outlandish anti-gravity tricks, because the game isn't correct. I shouldn't be able to do those tricks. So, I shouldn't. And I don't want to be able to. And that's another reason why session is better than this, because on session you cannot do those tricks. But which one's more fun? Probably this. This is probably more fun than session, because it's easier. And you can get away with making massive mistakes. You can't make those mistakes in session, and that means that this is a lot more fun, but session is a lot more work, and it's a lot more rewarding, and it's a lot more realistic. And you cannot argue with those points, because this game doesn't have correct gravity physics, and there's no way anyone can dispute that. It just doesn't. It's not a matter of opinion, it just doesn't. And that just makes Session a more accurate representation of skateboarding. And I'm going to get hate for saying that, but you cannot argue that point. It's not a matter of opinion. One game represents skateboarding more accurate than the other. That's all it comes down to. You might like this game more, but you can't argue that the physics are more accurate on this game, because they are not. And it's like being able to do an ollie just with my back foot. That's not real. Being able to float into space, that is not real. And you know, we can see those things. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking about the difference between these two games. I really like them both. I'm going to continue playing them both. But this one is ruining Session, because it's making Session really fucking hard. The more time I spend in here, the more difficult it is for me to do stuff in Session when I go on there. So I play on this for half an hour, I go back in Session, I've got to spend an hour being able to readjust myself so I can do tricks on Session. So yeah, this game kind of does ruin Session a little bit, but if you put the effort in on Session, it's a lot more rewarding and a lot more realistic. So I'm hoping that the people that are very blinkered to this, or very blinkered to that, I'm hoping that what I've talked about in this video is going to kind of like open your eyes a little bit to the reality of what these two games are. This one is more arcadey than Session. It just is. And it's mostly down to those physics and the ease of being able to do ollies. That makes this one less of a realistic representation of skateboarding. It just does. It just comes down to those two really simple things. It's a piece of piss to a really high ollie, and you float like gravity isn't a thing. And that makes it, absolutely makes this more of an arcadey game than Session, which is more of a skateboarding simulator game. And I know that a lot of people are going to get angry about that, and I know a lot of people are going to say, this is a simulator, this is an accurate representation of skateboarding. No, it isn't. It really isn't. And if you spend a few hours on Session learning how to play it properly, and you do a few lines on Session, and you do a few tricks and stuff, then you come back in here, you will see the significant difference between the two, and the way they are able to take real skateboarding and turn it into a game. And Session has done that job a lot more successfully than this game has. But as I said before, I think this one's more fun. It really is. This one is more fun because it's easier. That one's more rewarding because it's harder and it's more realistic. Bring on the hate. I don't care, because what I've just said is absolutely true. All of those things are true. All of those things are just facts. And it's not my opinion, okay? This is not my opinion that being able to do a massive ollie like this just by dragging both sticks down is not accurate. It just isn't accurate. You cannot do that in real life. That's not my opinion. That's just true. To do an ollie in real life, you've got to use your front foot. And that makes Session a much more accurate representation of real life skateboarding than this game. Same thing with the gravity as well. Anyway, we are done. I love both games. I'm going to continue playing both games, and I'm going to have a lot of fun on both games. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what, you know, it continues with the development of Session before the release, because there's a lot of things in there that they haven't done yet that they've got planned. So I've got really high hopes for that. But equally, the PC users are telling me that, you know, this game has so many mods and things that are, you know, enhancements to this game that make it a lot better, that we're hoping to see move to this game. And the final thing I'm going to say before I leave this game, a load of people got really angry at me for pointing out bad things about this game, saying it's a small studio without much money. Now, at the time I didn't know this, but now I do, right? The studio that is making Session is a smaller studio, okay? So when you say it's all right that that's bad on Skater XL because it's a small studio without much money, it's all right that the windows aren't reflective, they've used two-dimensional images for things instead of three-dimensional, you know, model sculptures like car wheels and stuff. There's not a very high polygon count in the environments. There's a lot of things on this game that are in my opinion, unforgivable and substandard, considering this is a game coming out on an Xbox One towards the end of the generation of this console. I think there are a lot of things that are very poor for that. It's more like a low quality, 360 game. And I've mentioned all of these things, and every single time I mention anything in this game that is bad, the same thing happens. People comment saying, whatever it was, doesn't matter, that's not important. What's important is the skateboarding, and whatever it was is that way because it's a small studio and you've got to respect that, therefore we're going to forgive it. The people who are making Session is a smaller studio. I didn't know that. I do know that now because people have been talking about it in the comments. But the people who are making Session are a smaller studio than the people that made this. But the graphics on Session are much, much better than this. The windows are actually reflective and look like glass. It's not just a grey square. It's like, the car wheels, I know it's not important, but to me graphics are important. I would prefer the graphics to be nice. So car wheels are a three-dimensional model, not a two-dimensional pixelated image. There's puddles on the floor that are reflections. There's a night and daytime cycle. There's so many things in Session that make it a higher quality game than this, even though most of those things are nothing to do with the core reason this game exists, which is simulating skateboarding. But there's a lot of stuff in Session that is more like a highly polished game. Now, someone said in the comments, they weren't talking to me, they were talking to someone else, and they said, yeah, but he's comparing this game to a AAA blockbuster company, and they were talking about EA, obviously, because I made a reference between this and Skate. That isn't what I'm comparing it to. I'm comparing it to Session, and Session has, all the way across the board, done things that are more highly polished than this game. It's like, it's very obvious that the models and things have a higher polygon count. It's very obvious that the environments, there's a lot more work gone into those environments. There are reflections and things that look much more realistic than they do in here. And the defense that everyone has jumped to is saying this is a small studio. Right, Creator Studios is a smaller studio than Easy Day. It's a smaller studio, so they've probably got less money. So you cannot go to that as an excuse. And I did comment on someone, I can make games, I am a coder, I can do these. I'm not a game like this by any stretch of the imagination, but I could make a really shit game, but I'm just me, and I don't have much money. That doesn't excuse my shit game. If I make a shit game and put it on the Xbox and charge people 35 quid for it, and those people buy it, they can't defend my shit game saying, yeah, but it's just one guy on his own without much money, therefore we have to forgive all these things that are wrong. You can't do that. That is not a go-to. And we can see that by the comparison of these two studios, whereas one game is creating a highly polished game with very, very impressive environments, and the other game is not doing those things. But, that said, the important thing is the skateboarding, and both games have done a really, really good job of making the skateboarding feel good. It really does feel good. It's very nice to play this game. It's very nice to play the other game. But as I said before, there's also a difference in the physics. There's also a difference in, that ollie that you can do where you just pull your sticks down. Those two things are wrong. There's also a difference in the way the sticks work when you're switch. For Session, that's wrong, and for this game, it's correct. I hope that Session kind of really, really think about that and they decide to change it before they release, because I definitely think they've got it wrong. But all of these things are not a matter of opinion, okay? They're just facts about the differences between these two games. If we did a polygon count on this game for a bit of the scenery and the environment, and we did the same thing on Session, it would be a higher polygon count on Session. If we look at the windows on buildings on this game and look at them on Session, one's reflective, one isn't. It's not a matter of opinion of which one of those is better. It's just simple that the one that's had more work put into it is better. And that's the same all the way across the board. If we compare the way that the sticks work when you're skating switch, this one is a more accurate representation of real-world skateboarding and what you do with your legs than Session. Therefore, this one is better because it's a more realistic representation of true skateboarding. If we compare doing an ollie by having to use just your back foot or your back and your front foot, then this game just uses your back foot to do an ollie, or a high ollie if you use both sticks, whereas Session doesn't. It uses both feet, which is more like real life because you've got to use both feet in real life. This is not a matter of opinion. Session is better because it represents the way you do an ollie more realistically. Exactly the same thing with the gravity. You might prefer the gravity on this game, but Session's gravity is better because it more accurately represents real-world skateboarding. Now, your preference is irrelevant. If you prefer the gravity on this game because it makes the game easier, that's irrelevant. This is trying to simulate real-world skateboarding, and the gravity is off. There isn't enough gravity. The gravity on Session is more accurate to real-world gravity. That makes it better. None of these things are a matter of somebody's opinion. All of these things are just simple facts about each of these games. It's like, what is a matter of opinion is which one you find the most fun, which one you enjoy the most, okay? Personally, my opinion is that this game is more fun than the other one. This is more fun than Session. Personally, my opinion is that Session is more rewarding than this because it's more difficult. And it's more difficult because it's more realistic. But the realistic part, that's not my opinion, that's just a fact. Session is more realistic because the physics are different, and the physics on this game are too floaty, so it makes that one more realistic. All of those things are just facts, and it's people that are arguing those facts as though those things are opinions, and they're not opinions. And me pointing out these facts is making people that prefer this game to the other one really fucking angry. Like, why is it making you angry? This game's still a lot of fun, but there are things that are not an accurate representation of skateboarding on this, which in Session there are. And it's the other way around on other things as well. There are things in here that are an accurate representation of skateboarding, especially when you're standing in switch stance, which on Session it is not. Right? Those things are irrefutable facts. If you are a big fan of this game and you cannot handle that this game has incorrect physics because the gravity is off, then that's just your problem. Don't thumbs down my video because the people who made this game didn't get the gravity right and you can't handle someone pointing out that fact. It is a fact. It's not an opinion. It is a fact. The gravity on this game is off. The gravity on Session is not off. It's just a fact. And people are getting really, really fucking angry that I'm pointing out that fact. But I still really like this game. I still find this game a lot of fun. I still play this game. I'm still impressed with this game. I'm still glad this game exists and that someone took the trouble to make it. But there are things that are not right on this game, and I'm very happy to point those things out and say, it's a shame that this isn't right, because I would prefer it if it was right. But I'm not going to say, but it's a small studio, so therefore I'll ignore that this thing isn't right, because Creative Studios is a smaller studio, and on their game it is right. You know? So, before you jump onto the comments and have an absolute fucking fanny attack about me saying there are some things on Session that are more accurate than there are on this game, just really think about what I've said in this video, because those things are, it's not just my opinion, those things are fact. This gravity is off. It is off. But it's enjoyable, you can get used to it, you can forgive it once you get used to it, and it makes the game much easier to play. So, you know, but you cannot come back at me and say they used a mathematical equation that means that this gravity is completely accurate, because it just ain't. It just ain't. It doesn't matter what you say, it just is not. I like that it was 11:11 there when that came up. But yeah, you can't, I mean, the stuff that you can do on here is insane. You cannot do this in real life, no matter what. You just can't, unless you get in a spaceship and go to another planet that's got different gravity to us. This is not real. That doesn't exist in real life. It's not an accurate representation. We all know that it's not. We all know it's a little bit floaty. And also the guys on PC have said that there is a gravity slider on PC, and you can adjust the gravity and make it more realistic. Or I assume you can adjust the gravity the other way and make it a bit more like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, you know, if you want to be extremely arcadey and outlandish. But as it is set on the Xbox, which we can't adjust, we just get what they give us, it is a little bit arcadey. It absolutely is. And the word arcadey is very insulting to people that like this game and believe it to be a true simulation of skateboarding, but you just got to deal with it. It is a little bit arcadey because of a few things, this massive ollie and though the gravity, the physics of the gravity, that makes it a little bit arcadey. And whether you like it or not, that is a fact. It is not an opinion. Please don't think these things are just my opinion. They're not. They are facts. So don't get really fucking angry at me and start, you know, spitting your dummy out. It's just ridiculous. Right, there are some things that I did say on another video that were opinions, but the ones that I'm saying on this one ain't. They're just facts. That's just the way it is. And if you can't accept that, then that's your own fault. I'm perfectly right with accepting those things and enjoying both of these games. I do enjoy them both. I find this one more fun than the other one. I find the other one more realistic and more rewarding, because it is. It's really hard to do stuff that's rewarding. It's really easy to do stuff on here, so it's fun, but it's not quite so rewarding because it's a little bit too easy. Tony Hawk's, it's much easier to do stuff. It's not rewarding at all. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, if you are a fan of one and not the other, try and take your blinkers off, have a crack on the other one, learn it, learn the differences between the two, enjoy both of them. They're both quite cheap. I mean 35 quid is not expensive for a game. The other one's about 17 quid. For session, that's a fucking bargain. It really is. If you ain't bought it, you really should, because it is very, very cheap. But if you go in there from here, don't expect to have any fun at all for the first couple of hours, because it is different. You've got to learn new controls, especially if you want to do anything switch. You've got to learn to use your front foot when you want to ollie, and it is more difficult. But if you put the time in, it is more rewarding and you're going to enjoy it. So just enjoy both games and stop fucking slagging each other off because one person likes one and the other person likes the other. Just like them both, you know? I think that would be a much better thing, don't you? Both games are good. Enjoy them both. Both games have things that ain't quite right, but never mind. Just carry on skating in whatever way the game is that you're playing works. And realise that whichever one you've chosen, whichever one you play in, there are a couple of things that aren't right based on real world, and you just have to do it the way the game is, and that's just the way it is, and it's the same for both of them. There are things that aren't accurate to real world skateboarding, and you just have to adjust yourself to the way the game's been made. But I tell you what, I really, really, really hope that Creature Studios change their switch stance to the way this works. And I hope that if we give them a bit of feedback and really, you know, if you really think about it, this way is correct. If you really think about what you do with your feet, what you do with your legs, how, you know, your muscles and all that stuff, it's like the way you compress, this game is correct and the other game is wrong. And I hope they switch that over. So there we go. Hopefully this one won't get quite as many thumbs down, because I'm hoping that there aren't a bunch of twats that just say, oh, your opinion's wrong, you're a fucking idiot, etc, etc. Grow up and just realise that the games are a little bit different, and these moon physics are not real. They're just not real, and you just got to deal with that. It doesn't matter if you're a fan of this game, you watched it in development, you did 200 hours on the PC. This Xbox version of it is a bit arcadey because it's got moon gravity. Well, not as bad as moon gravity, but certainly not Earth gravity. And also, you're going to have to admit that that's not possible in real life. You can't do an ollie of any fucking size in real life without incorporating your front foot in some way. So you just got to accept that. That's just reality of skateboarding. But it makes the game really bloody easy to play. So there we go, guys. I will see you in the next one. Have fun playing Skater XL. Have fun playing Session, and look forward to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater if you just want to have a little bit of fun without having to put in much effort. The button bashing of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I've got it on pre-order for the digital deluxe version. That comes in a couple of weeks and I'm looking forward to it. It's really nice they've given us that amount of time. We've got over 2 weeks, which is very unusual. I mean, I pre-ordered... I pre-ordered quite a lot of games because it says you can have it early, and then having it early is like the weekend, and it comes to the weekend where you can have it early, and I start downloading it and even fucking finish downloading before everyone else can have it as well. I thought, well, that was pointless buying on pre-order. Red Dead Redemption 2, I bought that on pre-order, and I managed to get maybe about 2 hours worth of the game before the official release. Now, pre-ordering a game and getting it early is good, obviously, because we're waiting for the games. But when you put videos on YouTube, it's really, really valuable to you when you can get a game early, because you get a lot more views on the game if you manage to get in there a little bit quicker. And so yeah, paying a bit of extra money to get a game a little bit quicker, if you're a YouTuber, is a really good idea. And what usually happens is that they say you'll get it early, but they don't say how much earlier. And then you like get it the day before, but your internet connection speed is really slow, and you don't actually get to play it until it's properly released, which is a bit of a bummer. But with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, it's like 20 days or something. It's like it comes out on the 14th, so you got a couple of weeks in August, and then it doesn't actually release until the 3rd of September. So you're getting, that's quite significant. Now for the pre-order, the only benefit you get is to have it early, but whether you're going for the normal one or the deluxe version, the only difference between those two is that one of them gives you all the retro stuff from the 80s. And I'm a skater from the 80s, so I kind of like feel like I want that stuff. I'm really hoping that it includes some of the boards that I had from that era, because I'm paying the extra to get that stuff. I really hope it does, but I don't think it will. There's some really obscure boards that I used to skate. I don't think they'll be in there, but I'm really hoping they will. I reckon it's just going to be some 80s style clothes for the old skaters. But I'm a big fan of Rodney Mullen, so I'd like to see him skating, back in the day, the way he looked in the 1980s as opposed to the way he looked later. Like, for instance, when he's doing his TED Talk, he looks completely different to the way he looked in the 80s. And it's like, recreating some of the stuff from the Rodney Mullen versus Day One song videos, recreating some of the footage from those videos. Oh my God, that's going to be amazing, isn't it? So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. Anyway, that's enough from me, guys. If you are not on the pre-order for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and you want to have a look at it, then subscribe to the channel, and when that comes out, I'll most definitely be chucking a whole load of videos up as soon as I can get in there. So I'm excited about it. 3 skateboarding games in a very short amount of time. We are spoiled. Not Session, because Session's not out yet. It's only preview, but we can play it. So that's nice. And I think every one of these games, it's kind of like this one and Session, they're a step up from playing Skate, because we've got that left foot, right foot stick thing, and that's a new thing, and it's really good. And it takes a bit of time to get used to it, but once you've got used to it, it's really bloody good. It's a massive improvement on Skate. It's brilliant, and if you ain't got used to it yet, just persevere with it. You'll really be glad that you did. And then, of course, we all know what Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 is like. I loved that warehouse level and the school. It was a great game at the time, and now it's been very highly polished. And it's like the first bunch of Tony Hawk's games that were actually involving Tony Hawk, the ones that he had something to do with, they were great. When we got to Underground and all the other ones where it was just using his name because he had signed a contract and it was fuck all to do with the games, they were absolute trash, and it just went ridiculous. But the original ones that he had, a little bit of saying what's going on, they were brilliant, and being able to play them again but with nice graphics, I'm really fucking looking forward to that. All the Creator Park stuff, and the music was good as well. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater music was brilliant. The soundtrack was really good for all of those games. I don't really like the soundtrack on this or on Session. I think this is a little bit better than Session, but I don't like either of them. I really don't. But yeah, I really liked the soundtrack for Tony Hawk's. Absolutely. But unfortunately, because I'm a YouTuber, I'm going to have to turn the sound down. But I am going to play them without making videos, of course. And when I do that, the sound is up. So when I play this or Session, I do have the music on if I'm not actually, going to put the video on YouTube. Same thing is going to be there with Tony Hawk's as well. But I'm excited about it, ain't you? Isn't it brilliant? 3 skateboarding games? It's fucking unbelievable. You think 10 years since we had the last decent skateboard game? That's insane, isn't it? 10 fucking years. What have people been playing at? But I imagine, because of the amount of time we've had to wait, the number of skateboarders there are, I don't know a single skateboarder that isn't a gamer. It's like, if you're a skateboarder, you're the sort of person that plays games as well. So all skateboarders are going to be getting these games. They absolutely are. I can't imagine any skateboarder that isn't going to buy all 3 of these. It's like, I really can't. And I know they're not cheap. Games are getting expensive, especially with the next generation of consoles. They get £99 for a top level fucking pre-order on all the games that have just been added to the game. That's fucking unbelievable. Not to the Game Pass, to the store. That's insane. That's way overpriced. to get the top level of a game. £99, it's just fucking unbelievable. How are parents going to cope with kids that are saying, I want this game for Christmas? £100 for a game. It's outrageous. I think what they've got to do now is give us really fucking good demos for every game that comes out. Because I buy a lot of games, and quite often I buy a game because it looks good, and then when I play it, it's terrible, and I play it for like an hour, and then I'll never ever touch it again. And quite often I'll waste 50 quid doing that. I spend 50 quid on a game, play it for an hour, I think, actually this is shit. And then I sack it off, and we get a lot of fake reviews on the store. And you know, you buy games based on the fake reviews, you play it for a bit, it's no good, you've wasted your money. I don't want to waste 100 quid a time every time that happens. We absolutely are going to need demos that last longer than an hour when this happens. But I mean, you guys will have seen this as well. When a new game comes out, what generally happens is immediately it gets a lot of 5-star reviews in the store, and then a lot 2-star reviews. And you look at the 5-star reviews and you think, hang on a minute, these have all been done by the same person. Now, just imagine for a moment that, you know, you work for EA and your job is you sit at a computer all day, you log into loads of different Xbox accounts and you write fake reviews on their new version of FIFA because everyone else thinks it's a bag of shit because of the microtransactions and they're trying to get their star rating up. Now, when you go into the reviews of these games, we're going on a bit of a tangent here, but it happens. When you go and look at these 5-star reviews when any new game comes out, it's like, think about it. The person that made the game, the people involved with the game, the studio, the friends of those people, the people that are in the game, all of those people have a Microsoft account. They can all leave reviews, and they all will leave reviews. If I made a game, I'd probably leave a review on it. I'd probably give it 5 stars. I'd say nice things about my game, wouldn't you? I think everybody would. It's a bit cheeky, but I very much doubt that there are many people that make games that then say, I could leave a review, but I'm not going to because it wouldn't be right because I actually made the game, so it'd be wrong of me to do that. They're not going to do that. They're just going to go in there and leave a review on their own game. This is going to happen. The other day I got someone comment on one of my videos. I'd reviewed a bunch of games and someone left a comment saying, thanks for reviewing our game. If you want to know more information about it, go here. And I was thinking, oh shit, I've got to watch the video now to see whether or not I said the game was good. Thankfully, I did say it was good. But at the end of the review, I said, would I pay for it? No. Would I download it on Game Pass? Yeah, it was enjoyable. So yeah, the actual developer of that game watched my video and left a comment on it. It's like the developers of games are real people that have access to the internet, have Microsoft accounts and can leave reviews and comments. And we have to consider that. So the people that made this game could look at my videos about this game if they want to. You know, they are normal, real people. But anyway, every time a new game comes out, get yourself onto the store, look at the 5-star reviews, and it's like, I play a little game with myself of trying to find the reviews that are the bullshit ones. And they're always the same. They always kind of pick out a few elements of the game and they focus on those elements, and all of the reviews all say the same thing. And then normally they say something negative about their competition, and they all tend to say the same thing as well. And you think, this looks a little bit dodgy. But the thing that you want to do is those reviews are very probably written by the same person. Now, quite often you will see grammatical errors or spelling mistakes that are the same in every review. Now, one of the ones that I've noticed really, really often is you'll get, like, they'll write a sentence, do the full stop, and then start the next sentence. I'll talk too much. They'll start the next sentence without doing a space. So you've got a sentence, a full stop, and then another sentence with a lowercase letter and no space. I've noticed that mistake. That isn't correct. That's not the way we write. It's not grammatically correct at all. But I've noticed that that mistake appeared on pretty much every 5-star review for a game. I can't remember what game it was, but every 5-star review for the game, like a day or two after release, they were all talking about the same points on the game. They all gave it 5 stars, and every single one had that same mistake. Full stop, start a new sentence with a lowercase letter and no space. That is a very unusual error. It was really fucking obvious that all of those reviews were done by the same person sitting at a computer, logging from one account into the next, into the next, into the next, and just doing a review on that game. And it came from a big studio. It was like, I think it might have been an EA game or something like that. I can't remember, but it was a game that was getting slated by everybody, and then it just had loads and loads and loads of 5-star reviews, all saying the same thing, all with the same characteristics in the review, all with the same grammatical errors and mistakes. And it was so obvious. Every single one of them was fake and done by the same person. So I often say, yeah, have you read the fake reviews? And then people say to me, no, they're not fake reviews, they're genuine. And I'm like, you got to wake up and you got to realise that games that come out on the store generally get reviews from the people that made the games. I mean that said, I make quite a lot of products on the internet. I run a lot of businesses. I've got several products where people have to pay a membership fee to use whatever it is I've created, and all of them have got reviews from my customers. Not a single one of them have I put a fake review on. But when you sell a product on the internet, the legislation and stuff like that and the laws behind these things are really quite strict. And if I put a fake review on my own product, I'll get in a fucking shitload of trouble for it. But when you've made a game, and it's kind of like people with an Xbox account, I reckon that a lot of people would do that, and it would be a much more tempting and easy thing to do. Like just one of your mates, just saying to your mate, oh, you know, my game's coming out tomorrow, and it's like, oh, I've got Xbox, I'll do you a review. Obviously they're going to do a fucking amazing review, aren't they? But I mean, that aside, it's very, very apparent that there are a lot of fake reviews on games on the Xbox store from all developers. It just happens. It really, really just happens. But yeah, you can, as soon as a game comes out, you can jump into the reviews and you can very often pick out the ones that are fake really easily. They're always 5 stars. Normally, they go along the pattern of saying, this is great, this is great, this is great. It would be better if they had this, and this is better than that. That's what they say. They say, for this game that I am reviewing, these points are amazing. The game would be better if they added this feature, and the game is better than whatever competitor. Like if it's FIFA, it would be better than PES for whatever reason, and it's got 5 stars. That's the format that these fake reviews do, and then it's always the same, and then always the same characteristics. And the thing that they say, oh, I wish they would add blah blah blah. That, whatever that thing is, normally then comes. It's almost like, look, we listened to the fans because the fans said, I want this in the game, and now we've added this to the game. It's a joke. It really is a joke, but you see it over and over again. If you've never looked for it, if you don't think it goes on, then just be aware that it's there. And when you start noticing 5-star reviews on any game, look for those characteristics. The characteristics are, about this game, this is great, this is great. About the competition of this game, don't get that one, get this one because this is much better. About the future of this game, I wish they had this feature that miraculously appears on the game after a short amount of time. A lot of people saying exactly the same points, wanting exactly the same features, comparing it to the same game and saying this one's better, don't buy that one. Always don't buy that one. Why would you do that? If I review this game, I might compare it to Session, but I wouldn't say buy this one, don't buy that one. Because you'd waste your money on that. Well, I'd say buy them both. We've got 2 fucking skateboard games. Brilliant. Buy them both. I like them both. I actually love them both. But I think they've both got faults. And I'm not going to talk about that anymore because it makes people really angry. But I'll just say really quickly, Session's more realistic than this. But this is more fun than Session because it's easier. It's more arcadey because it's got moon physics. But a lot of people will have a total fanny flap about that because you seem to think that it's ultra realistic, and it isn't. You just got to realise that it isn't. Face up to the facts. It's a bit floaty, and you can do magic ollies. But if you can't accept those facts and you just blinker to the idea that this game is the most accurate representation of skateboarding ever, you're just wrong. It's just really, really simple. You are wrong. It's as simple as that. It's not my opinion, it's just fact. This is not realistic physics. That's not possible in real life. And those 2 things are absolutely irrefutable facts, and it's not a matter of opinion at all. But what is a matter of opinion is which game do you enjoy the most? Which one's the most fun? You know, they're all opinions. And I've got to be honest, I find this one more fun, but I find the other one more rewarding because it's more realistic. But I do find this one fun. I find Tony Hawk's fun as well, but it's not realistic at all. There's nothing realistic on that, but I find it fun. But I tell you what I love on Tony Hawk's, there's a button that does amplants. I can do amplants on a mini ramp. In fact, I was doing amplants on a mini ramp without realising I'd broken my wrist. I slammed onto my hands, and then I was trying to. It was the day that I learned to do amplants on a mini ramp, and I was learning to amplants, so I was doing them over and over and over and over again, trying to learn how to do them. It was a really small mini ramp. It was a Derby skate park, the little mini ramp there, and I was doing amplants on that mini ramp. They weren't very good, but they were amplants. They weren't tweaked out or anything, but they were amplants. I was doing them, putting my right hand down over and over and over and over again. I get home, I thought my arm's aching a little bit. A bit later in the night, I was like, oh, I fucking broke my arm. I've broken 11 bones. I completely understand the way a broken bone feels. I went to the hospital, got an x-ray, and I've broken my wrist. And I was like, I was doing implants on my broken wrist. But there you go. But yeah, I absolutely know the point where I broke it. I slammed fast. You know when sometimes you slam so fast that you're surprised that you're on the floor? It was one of them. It was like the board just went from underneath me and I hit the floor so fucking quickly. And that skate park is a concrete floor as well, and I banged my hand into the floor. It made my hand bleed a little bit. I didn't really think anything of it. But yeah, I bust my wrist. Do you remember going to Derby Skateboard Park? I don't know whether this is still the same situation. This is like 15 years ago. But you used to have to wear an helmet. But if you didn't have your own helmet, you used to be able to hire one. They'd give a helmet to you. And you'd put the helmet on, and the person who wore it before, it'd be all sweaty, and their sweat had dribbled down your face. It's like, did you ever have that? It's just fucking horrible. But I mean, I used to skate there hard, and you'd take your helmet off at the end of the day, and your head would be like steaming. There was like smoke coming off the top of your head, and it's like me and my mates used to stand there. I was like, oh my god, look at your head. And all of us had got steam coming off the top of our heads. It was crazy. I fucking loved Derby Skateboard. That vert ramp though was fucking terrifying. It absolutely was. Was there once, and there's this dude who come in. I don't know why he was in the skate park, but he was drunk. He got a can of beer with him, and he was drunk in the park, and he was just like, oh, I can skateboard, give me a go. He'd never skateboarded in his life. We talked him into dropping in on the vert ramp, and he just banged onto the floor. He just lay on the floor, on the flat of the vert ramp for ages. Oh. I remember the first day on that park where I dropped in on the bowl corner, which is vert, but everyone was like, whoa, Steve just dropped in on the bowl corner. I was like, yeah, not bad. And then my mate, Rich, he dropped in on he'd been smoking a lot in his car. He'd smoked a fucking lot. And it's like his girlfriend was there, and he wanted to sort of impress her a bit. And the vert wall at Derby Park is fucking high. I mean, you know when you sit on the edge of the coping and you shove yourself off so you slide down? I've done that off that vert wall, and that is frightening, okay? If you've ever been to Derby Skate Park, you know what I'm talking about. That vert wall is really fucking high. I mean, if you hang with your hands, your feet are still on vert, and if you let go and slide down, it is a little bit of an adrenaline experience. Well, Rich dropped in on that vert wall, and the entire park had come to a complete halt while everyone watched him do it. But he dropped in and he slammed so fucking hard, and everyone was like, don't do it, you're just going to fucking kill yourself, you're definitely going to break a bone, don't do it. But he did it, and he dropped in. He made the transition all right, but the pressure as he come out at the bottom of the transition, where the little bit of metal is and it goes onto the concrete floor, as soon as he hit that bit, he was gone. It was just too much downward pressure. He couldn't take it in his knees. You know when you're dropping on vert, you've got to take that pressure in your knees. He couldn't take that much pressure from the speed of dropping in down that vert wall, and he just slammed so fucking hard into that concrete floor. He went and sat in his car. I mean, he was the driver as well. But he used to smoke a lot, and he'd drive us to Derby. I can remember one day we were driving, and we got to these traffic lights, like going through Burton, and he stopped at the traffic lights, and we just all sat in the car chatting, and the traffic lights turned green. It was like, Rich. He didn't do anything. It was like, Rich. It's like, traffic light's green. And he'd fallen asleep. What the fuck? I do not feel safe if you drive me home. He'd just fallen asleep, like, whilst waiting at traffic lights in the seat. It was just like his head down like this. It was like, Rich. And he started to snore like through his nose. It's like, fucking hell, he's asleep. It's like we had to shake him to wake him up. It's like, oh my god. It's like, next week you ain't driving. And Rich used to drive quite a lot, and then I used to drive there. I had this massive Escort estate that I used to drive in, but we could fit fucking loads of people in it. So we used to drive up to Nottingham and pick a few of our friends up from, there was at university in Nottingham. So we'd pick all them up, and there was like 8 of us in the car all going to Derby Skate Park. But yeah, Derby Skate Park was so good. I mean, really far back, it was different. The layout was different, and they used to have the mini ramp quite high up. Where you walk in, it was sort of opposite you, and it was raised. And I preferred that version of the park. That was before the big spine ramp over on the left at the back. That section was just street at the time. Then they changed it, probably in about 95, 96 or something, and they put the big spine in, and they moved the mini ramp to behind the big spine. I preferred it the way it was originally. Now, originally, before they switched everything over, they used to open up the basketball court so you could go in there as well. So they used to set that up like a little bit of a street scene. And going back a lot further, back into the 80s, the leisure centre in Hinckley they used to set up the leisure centre as a street scene in there as well. So I mean, me and my mate used to actually skateboard from the Nuneaton to Hinckley to be able to go to that park, and they used to have a little quarter pipe there and stuff, and they had a little, well, they had a half pipe, but it was 2 quarter pipes just put down on the floor. It hadn't got a flat base between them or anything, but it worked like a half pipe. But they had like a little street course and stuff that was brilliant, and that was back in the 80s at the leisure centre. But it was a real lot of fun. There were no no proper skateboard parks around that area at the time. Now my old town, the Nuneaton, and the very small town next to it, Market Town Bedworth, they do both have they've both got a ramp park. Nuneaton's got a ramp park. It's got a little spine, it's got a vert, and Bedworth's got a street park. There's quite a few skateboard ramps around now, but there used to be one in a little place called Enderby, which was a little wooden ramp that was really fucking nice to skate. It was beautiful. But yeah, that's going back quite a long way. But Derby Skate Park was brilliant. It really was brilliant. And then if you go back to the early 80s, Birmingham Wheels, Stampy's Park, Stampy and Ziggy at Birmingham Wheels with the indoor bowl and the massive vert ramp, and then that metal spine. I loved that spine ramp. And now back at the time, there was a bit of a craze where people used to hook an inner tube over your wheels. So you'd hook an inner tube over your front trucks, pull it over the nose, over your tail, and hook it over your back trucks, and then you used to click your feet into it. So there were loads of people that used to do that, and the stuff they could do on that spine was just phenomenal. It's like doing an ollie blunt when you've got an inner tube attached to your skateboard with your feet hooked into it is a piece of piss. You just get up into a blunt and then jump backwards. I tried the inner tube trick and fell off because it was kind of like, I'm stuck to my board, I feel like I can't do anything, I feel very vulnerable if anything happens, and I never got that. I only tried it maybe once, but I couldn't get the hang of it. But watching the people on that metal spine who were using the inner tube trick, unbelievable. The stuff they was doing was just fucking phenomenal. It was like gravity defying, simply because the board was stuck to their feet. I mean, obviously they couldn't do any flips, but what they were doing looked fucking amazing, it really did. But yeah, I mean, ollie blunts, it made them very, very easy. But yeah, it was really, really nice. I mean, I used to get into a blunt. It's hard to get back out of one, but because it was a spine, you could get into a blunt and then just drop in on the other side of the spine, so that was easy. But that's a little bit of a cheat, isn't it? Just doing an ollie blunt on the centre of a spine and then dropping down the other side. It's a lot harder to get out, but I could get out of the blunt by holding the nose of my board and just jumping backwards. I could do that, but I couldn't ollie out the blunt. I mean, I probably made it a couple of times, but it certainly wasn't a consistent trick I could do at all. I really struggled with that. But you strap an inner tube over your board, and it's a piece of piss to get out of a blunt without having to hold your board with your hand, so it's stuck to your feet. But anyway, I don't know how many. I don't know whether that craze was something that was popular, whether people in other areas did that as well. Let me know. Did you ever experience the idea of putting an inner tube over your truck, so you'd got 2 lines of rubber across the top of your deck to hook your feet into? It's like, did you do that? Did you ever see it? But yeah, it made a huge difference. It made skateboarding like this game, floaty. It did. It defied gravity because they could do things that you can't normally do. And it was like, I just look at it with I was quite young, great big eyes. I'm fucking so impressed with it. But I only tried it the one time, and when I tried it, it was so difficult I didn't stick at it. I just hurt myself. It's like, I'm going to fall off, but I can't jump off my board. It's frightening. But yeah, that ramp was really fast. Half of it was metal and half of it was wood. I don't know whether they actually did metal surface over all of it, but they certainly didn't while I was skating it. But yeah, the metal half was very fast, and then the big vert as well on top of the hill, that was all metal. And then down the bottom of the hill they had the indoor little bowl with a big wall ride, and you used to be able to drop in and pump from the opposite side and get right up the top of the wall ride. And they've got like an airwalk sticker high up on the wall ride, so you try and get up to the airwalk sticker. But that inside that little where that bowl was inside the warehouse, it was a very small little warehouse. It's like you could barely skate in there because there was like a metal roof rafters that weren't that much higher than where your head's going to be when you were skating. But it used to get so fucking hot in there, so everyone was sweating buckets. But it was it was a lot of fun. It was Ziggy and Stampy were the 2 guys that ran it at the time. And it was a fucking incredible park. Me and my mate Neil used to go over there on the train and then skate down to Brummy Wheels, Stampy's Park. It was lovely. But But that is a long time ago. That was in the mid-80s. But it was a lot of fun. Really was a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, leave comments. Let me know what you think. Did you know about this thing with the switch stance? If you are a hardcore fan of one of these games, are you going to give the other one a chance? I really think you should. Just please give them a chance. You will enjoy both of them, but they are different in lots of fundamental ways, which makes it really hard to go from this one to that one. Going from this to session is a very difficult transition. It really is. Going from session to this is really quite easy because the game is so much more accessible. It's so much easier to maintain your lines. But anyway, if you want to argue with yourself in the comments and do a lot of name calling and stuff, then go ahead. Right, I'll see you next time. I've talked long enough. Take care. Bye bye.